You want to know the exact moment I realized I was completely fucked? It wasn't when my new boss, half my age, started dismantling my methods in front of the entire floor team. It wasn't even when I saw my quarterly bonus disappear after 27 years of perfect attendance. It was when I caught my wife of 22 years giving that subtle, agreeing nod to the man who was systematically destroying my career. The same man who'd been leaving his DNA on our bedroom sheets while I worked late shifts. Turns out workplace betrayal is just the appetizer when your spouse is the one who sharpened the knife for your execution. What he was really saying, in corporate-approved language that wouldn't trigger an HR complaint, was that I, Frank Reeves, veteran machinist with nearly 3 decades of perfect attendance, was obsolete. A dinosaur, the factory equivalent of a flip phone in an iPhone world. But here's what broke me: the slight nod of agreement from my wife Diana as she stood in the back of the room with the other union reps. Just a barely perceptible movement, but I caught it. My own wife silently confirming I was indeed the outdated waste of payroll Jackson was describing. That was the moment I should have known something was wrong, really wrong. But I was too busy feeling the humiliation burn through my chest like molten steel to connect the dots. I didn't know then that I was witnessing the beginning of my own execution, professionally, maritally, and almost literally. I didn't realize my wife had already slept with my new boss 14 times by that point. I couldn't have imagined that the promotion I'd worked my entire career for was just the bait in a trap designed to destroy me. And I definitely didn't suspect that in exactly 43 days, I would find myself standing over Jackson Reed's unconscious body in the factory parking lot with a decision to make that would determine the rest of all our lives. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. The promotion came through on a Friday, after nearly 3 decades of showing up early, staying late, and knowing every millimeter of the production line better than I knew my own reflection. Upper management finally recognized what everyone on the floor already knew. Frank Reeves was the backbone of Meridian's Eastern operations. Diana and I celebrated that night, steaks at Callahan's, the fancy place downtown we normally saved for anniversaries. She wore that burgundy dress I loved, the one that hugged her hips in a way that still made my pulse quicken after 22 years of marriage. We drank champagne. We made love when we got home, the passionate, slightly drunk kind we hadn't had in months. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered afterward, her head on my chest. "You finally got what you deserve." Funny choice of words, in retrospect. The new position came with a $12,000 salary bump, an actual office with a window, and responsibility for 17 workers across 2 shifts. It also came with Jackson Reed, the newly hired operations manager I'd be reporting to. We met on Monday morning. Jackson was everything I wasn't, 35 to my 52, slim and polished, where I was solid and weathered, armed with business jargon where my vocabulary consisted of practical solutions. His handshake was firm but careful, like he was worried my calluses might be contagious. "Frank, great to finally meet the legend himself," he said with that smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I've heard you're the guy who keeps this place from falling apart." "Just doing my job," I replied, instantly uncomfortable with the praise. "In the factory world, you let your work speak for itself. Anyone too eager to compliment you was usually setting you up for something. Well, your job just got bigger, but I'm confident you'll adapt to the new methodologies we're implementing. Management is really focused on streamlining operations this quarter." New methodologies. Streamlining. These were the first warning signs, but I missed them entirely. I was still riding the high of the promotion, of finally being recognized, of Diana's pride in me. The first week went fine. I settled into my new role, learned the paperwork side of things, started getting comfortable giving directives to guys who'd been my shoulder-to-shoulder colleagues just days before. Some adjustments were awkward, but nothing unexpected. Then came the second week. Jackson called me into his office first thing Monday morning. "Frank, I've been reviewing your production reports from last week," he said, his tone immediately setting off alarm bells in my head. "These numbers are concerning." "Concerning how?" "We hit all our targets. You hit the old targets. I've implemented new benchmarks that align with corporate's vision for the quarter. He slid a spreadsheet across the desk. The numbers he wanted were impossible. We'd need to increase output by 35% with the same manpower and equipment. This isn't realistic, I said bluntly. The machines can't cycle that fast without breaking down, and the team is already pushed to their limit. Jackson's smile tightened. I was afraid you might say that. This resistance to progress is exactly why Meridian has fallen behind our competitors. We need forward-thinking leadership, not maintenance of the status quo. The way he said it, like maintaining quality and worker safety was some kind of character flaw, made my face hot. But I swallowed my pride. I needed this promotion. Diana and I had already discussed using the extra money to finally finish the kitchen renovation we'd started 3 years ago. I'll see what we can do, I said, taking the spreadsheet. That afternoon, I gathered my team and explained the new targets. The looks on their faces ranged from disbelief to outright anger. Those numbers will kill us, Frank, said Mike Dempsey, a 20-year veteran like myself. And the machines, you know that. I know, Mike. I'm pushing back on it. But for now, let's just do our best. We did our best. It wasn't enough. By Thursday, we'd had 2 minor injuries and a major machine breakdown. I documented everything meticulously and presented it to Jackson, explaining that the targets weren't just ambitious, they were dangerous and counterproductive. He barely glanced at my report. Sounds like excuses to me, Frank. Maybe you're not. Cut out for management after all. Leadership requires vision, not just mechanical know-how. That stung. I'd spent my entire career being the guy who got things done, who solved problems others couldn't. Now this MBA kid was suggesting I lacked vision. Give me a real solution, I countered. More staff, better equipment, or more realistic targets. Pick one. How about option D, better leadership? Jackson leaned back in his chair. I've scheduled an all-hands meeting next Tuesday. I expect to see significant improvement by then, or we'll need to discuss your role here. I left his office seething but determined. Over the weekend, I redesigned some of the workflow processes, called in favors with maintenance to fine-tune the machines, and came in Sunday to personally prep everything for Monday's shift. Diana found me at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. Sunday night, still working on schedules. Come to bed, she said, her hand on my shoulder. You're killing yourself for this job. Jackson's setting me up to fail, I told her. He gave me impossible targets and now he's threatening my position if I don't meet them. I expected sympathy, alliance. Instead, her response was oddly detached. Maybe he sees potential for improvement you're missing. He has an MBA from Wharton. Frank, that kind of education gives people different perspectives. I stared at her, surprised by the defense of a man she'd never even met. An MBA doesn't tell you how fast metal can be safely machined, or how many pieces a human being can realistically inspect in an hour, Diana shrugged. All I'm saying is maybe there's room for both approaches, experience and innovation. She went back to bed. I stayed up until 4 a.m., reworking schedules until my eyes burned. Monday was a disaster. Despite my preparations, we fell, significantly short of Jackson's targets. One of our best operators, Thomas, sliced his hand open trying to keep pace. 7 parts failed quality inspection, more than we typically saw in a month. And all the while I felt Jackson watching me, monitoring my failure with something close to satisfaction. The all-hands meeting on Tuesday was where everything really started to unravel. Jackson gathered everyone, floor workers, office staff, even the union representatives, in the main break room. Diana was there with the other union reps, standing along the back wall. Jackson spent 10 minutes showing slides about operational excellence and competitive pressures before getting to his real point. Unfortunately, our recent transition, inline supervision, has resulted in significant production issues, he said, his eyes finding me in the crowd. Frank's methods, while historically adequate, are proving woefully outdated for our current market demands. The room went quiet. Everyone knew he was talking about me, the guy who'd kept this place running smoothly for decades. I felt every eye turn in my direction. But don't worry, Jackson continued smoothly. I'll be taking a more hands-on approach. to production management while Frank readjust to the realities of modern manufacturing. It was a public execution, professional humiliation designed to undermine my authority with my team. And that's when I saw it. Diana, standing with the other union reps giving that slight nod of agreement, my own wife. After the meeting, I confronted Jackson in his office. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, forgetting all corporate protocol. "You set me up with impossible targets and then threw me under the bus in front of the entire plant?" Jackson's expression was maddeningly calm. "I gave you an opportunity. To prove your adaptability, Frank, you failed. But I'm not firing you, just reducing your responsibilities until you demonstrate you can handle them. Reducing my... What does that mean? It means you'll keep your supervisor title for now, but day-to-day decisions will go through me first, and we'll need to put you on a performance improvement plan, which unfortunately means you won't be eligible for your quarterly bonus." The bonus. The $3,500 we were counting on for the kitchen, and to finally replace Diana's 13-year-old car. "This is bullshit," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You know it, I know it, and everyone on that floor knows it." Jackson sighed, like my anger was just another disappointing but expected failure. "Take the rest of the day off, Frank. Clear your head. Come back tomorrow ready to be part of the solution." I wanted to put my fist through his face. Instead, I walked out, punched out my time card, and drove home in a fog of rage and humiliation. Diana wasn't home when I arrived. She'd texted saying she had a late union meeting and would grab dinner out. I sat in our half-renovated kitchen, nursing a whiskey and replaying the day's events. Something wasn't adding up. The timing of Jackson's hire, my promotion, and the immediate undermining of my position felt coordinated somehow. I called Mike Dempsey, who'd been at Meridian even longer than me. "It's not just you," Mike confirmed. "Word is, Jackson's got a mandate from corporate to reduce senior staff costs. Easiest way to do that is to make life hell for the highest paid floor managers until they quit. No severance that way." "But I just got promoted," I said. "Why promote me just to push me out?" Mike was quiet for a moment. "Maybe to avoid age discrimination claims? Promote the older guy, then document performance issues, then either demote or terminate with cause. Cleaner. Legally, it made a sick kind of sense. But it didn't explain Diana's reaction, her subtle support of Jackson, her dismissal of my concerns. When she finally came home around 9 p.m., I was on my third whiskey. "You're drinking on a work night?" she asked, setting down her purse. "Apparently I'm not management material, so what does it matter?" I replied bitterly. Diana sighed and sat across from me. "I heard about the meeting. People are saying you weren't prepared for Jackson's new production goals." The fact that she was repeating the official line, Jackson's line, rather than automatically taking my side felt like another betrayal. "Those goals were deliberately impossible," I said. "He's trying to push me out, Diana. After 27 years. Maybe." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe it is time to consider other options. You've always talked about taking the retirement package and opening that boat repair shop. That was supposed to be in 5 years when the mortgage is paid off. Not now." She didn't meet my eyes. "I'm just saying change doesn't have to be negative. Sometimes it opens new doors." I went to bed angry and confused. Diana stayed downstairs, saying she had union paperwork to catch up on. The next few weeks were a slow-motion nightmare. Jackson micromanaged everything I did. He changed procedures I'd established, countermanded my instructions to the team, and documented every perceived shortcoming in memos copied to HR. My quarterly bonus was officially canceled due to performance concerns. Then he reduced my overtime hours, cutting my paycheck even further. Meanwhile, Diana grew increasingly distant. She worked late more often, missed dinner, was constantly on her phone texting. When I tried to discuss my situation at Meridian, she seemed distracted or changed the subject to her union activities. "The new contract negotiation is taking all my energy," she'd say. "We can talk about your work stuff this weekend." But we never did. 4 weeks after the all-hands meeting, I was called into HR. Jackson sat next to Gloria from Human Resources, both wearing expressions of professional concern that didn't reach their eyes. Frank, we've documented several instances where you've failed to meet the performance standards outlined in your improvement plan, Gloria began. Standards that were changed specifically to ensure I'd fail, I interjected. She continued as if I hadn't spoken. We have two options to discuss today. Option 1, you accept a demotion back to line machinist, with the corresponding reduction in salary. Option 2, termination with 2 weeks severance. The room seemed to tilt sideways. After 27 years, this was what it came down to. A clinical discussion of how best to discard me. Can I at least know why? I asked, my voice rough. The real reason, not this performance bullshit. I've given my entire working life to Meridian. Jackson at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Business realities, Frank. We need to reduce costs and increase efficiency. Your methods are woefully outdated. Yeah, I got that part. I stood up. I'll take the demotion. But no, this. Both of you are making a massive mistake. This floor won't run without me. Gloria pushed a document across the desk. Sign here. The change is effective immediately. I signed. What choice did I have? 52 years old with a specialized skill set in a dying industry. The demotion meant a $15,000 salary reduction, losing both the recent raise and eating into my previous compensation. But it was better than nothing. I walked out of that office a broken man, not just financially, but in spirit. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, dismantled in less than a month. I didn't tell Diana about the demotion that night. I couldn't bear to see her disappointment, or worse, her acceptance of it. Instead, I told her I was working late and drove to O'Malley's, a dive bar far enough from Meridian that I wouldn't run into co-workers. 3 whiskeys in, a woman sat down beside me. Michelle Kwan, another union rep who worked closely with Diana. Thought I might find you here, she said, ordering a beer. How'd you know? I wasn't in the mood for company, especially not someone connected to work. Diana mentioned you come here sometimes. Michelle studied me. Rough day? I laughed bitterly. You could say that. Got demoted back to the line. 27 years, and I'm right back where I started. Michelle didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked guilty. You knew, I realized, watching her face. How? She picked at the label on her beer bottle. Frank, there's something you should know. About Diana. And Jackson. My stomach dropped. Some part of me had suspected, had noticed the signs, but I'd refused to consciously acknowledge the possibility. They're having an affair, aren't they? The words tasted like ash. Michelle nodded slowly. It started about 3 months ago, before your promotion. 3 months ago, before Jackson had even started at Meridian, before I'd been set up to fail. How? I demanded. He wasn't even working here then. They met through the union management. Preliminary contract discussions. Diana was on the negotiating committee. My head was spinning. And my promotion? My subsequent demotion? Was that all part of it too? Michelle looked genuinely uncomfortable now. I shouldn't be telling you this, but yes. Diana leveraged her position to get you the promotion. Why? Just to have it taken away? No, Frank. She got you promoted because Jackson needed your position. He was hired specifically to streamline operations and reduce senior staff costs. Your former position, floor operations manager, was perfect for what he wanted to do. But I was a senior machinist, not a manager. Exactly. They needed you out of that role. The easiest way was to promote you, then undermine you until you either quit or could be demoted without raising red flags. The brutal elegance of it made me sick. And Diana helped orchestrate this? Against her own husband? Michelle looked down. She got something out of it too. Jackson promised to support certain union demands in the new contract. Specifically, increased benefits for union representatives, like Diana. Wait, I said, a new and horrible thought forming. Did she help him target me specifically? Did she tell him how to break me? Michelle's silence was answer enough. I paid my tab with shaking hands and walked out, Michelle calling after me. The night air did nothing to clear my head. My wife of 22 years had not only cheated on me, but had actively participated in destroying my career. The career that had supported us, that had put our kids through college, that had defined my entire adult identity. I drove home slowly, trying to decide what to do. Confront her? Leave? Pretend I didn't know? None of the options seemed to lead anywhere but more pain. When I pulled into our driveway, there was an unfamiliar car parked on the street. Expensive. German. I knew without needing confirmation that it was Jackson's. They weren't even being careful anymore. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine off, lights dark, watching my own house. Then I saw them through the kitchen window, Diana and Jackson, standing close, his hand on her waist. In my kitchen, the one I'd been renovating little by little for 3 years, something snapped inside me. Not in the metaphorical sense, something physical, like a wire finally giving way after being stretched too far. I got out of the truck and approached the house silently. Through the window, I could see them more clearly now. Diana laughing at something he said. Jackson's hand moving from her waist to her ass. Her pressing against him, arms around his neck. I could have gone in then. Could have confronted them, demanded explanations, thrown Jackson out. The old Frank, rule-following, responsible Frank, would have done exactly that. But the man watching through that window wasn't that Frank anymore. That Frank had been systematically dismantled over the past month, his fundamental beliefs about work, loyalty, and marriage exposed as naive fallacies. So instead, I returned to my truck and drove away. I spent that night in a cheap motel, alternating between rage, grief, and calculated planning. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I went to work as usual, took my demotion without visible complaint, operated my old machine with the same precision I always had. If anyone noticed the emptiness behind my eyes, they didn't mention it. For the next 2 weeks, I was the model employee. I came in early, stayed late. I didn't challenge Jackson's new procedures, didn't complain about the increased workload, didn't even react when he walked by my station with that smug look of victory. At home, I maintained the fiction of normalcy. Diana seemed relieved that I hadn't mentioned the demotion, assuming I was too proud to discuss it. She didn't know that I was watching her now, noting when she texted, tracking her late meetings, cataloging the small lies she told about her whereabouts. I confirmed that she was sleeping with Jackson at least 3 times a week. Sometimes at our house when she thought I was working late. Sometimes at his condo across town. Once, horrifyingly, in his office at the plant. I learned that Jackson had gotten Diana's daughter from her first marriage a coveted internship at Meridian's corporate headquarters. I discovered that the union benefits Michelle had mentioned included a special retirement carve-out that would significantly increase Diana's pension, a provision that conveniently wouldn't apply to regular floor workers like me. Most importantly, I learned Jackson's routines, when he arrived at work, when he left, which parking spot he used. The fact that he consistently stayed an hour after his shift on Wednesdays to review production reports, actually to meet Diana in his office. And I made my own preparations. I emptied our joint savings account, 170842, and opened a new account at a different bank. I put our house up as collateral for a $50,000 business loan, forging Diana's signature on the paperwork. I found a small marina for sale 2 states away and put down a non-refundable deposit. On day 15 of my new life as a demoted machinist, I left work at exactly 5 p.m. But instead of driving home, I parked in the far corner of the employee lot and waited. Diana had texted earlier saying she had a budget committee meeting and would be home late. I knew what that really meant. Sure enough, at 6:15 p.m., I watched her car pull into the VIP section of the parking lot. She got out, smoothed her skirt, and hurried into the building through the management entrance. I waited another hour, using the time to write 2 letters. One to Mike Dempsey, explaining everything and apologizing for what would happen to the floor team after I was gone. Another to my brother in Idaho, telling him where to find me if things went badly. At 7:30 p.m., Diana's car left the parking lot, but I remained, watching the management entrance. 15 minutes later, Jackson emerged, looking smug and satisfied as he headed to his German luxury car. I got out of my truck and approached him. He didn't notice me until I was about 10 feet away. "Frank?" He looked surprised, then wary. "What are you doing here so late?" "Just wanted to talk," I said calmly. "About Diana." His expression flickered, guilt, then defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do, Jackson. You've been sleeping with my wife for 3 months. You used her to get me out of the way for your cost-cutting crusade. And you two set me up to fail so you could take my position and give her special benefits in return." He took a step back. "That's ridiculous. You're having some kind of breakdown, Frank. This is why we had to remove you from management." "Save it," I said, still eerily calm. "Michelle Kwan told me everything, and I've seen you two together, in my house, in your office. Fear finally registered on his face. "Look, Frank, whatever you think is happening, I know exactly what's happening." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my resignation letter. "I quit, effective immediately. I won't be back." Relief washed over him, quickly replaced by smug satisfaction. "Probably for the best. We both know you weren't adapting well to the new direction." "One more thing," I said, taking a step closer. "This is for 27 years of loyalty." The punch caught him perfectly on the chin. His head snapped back, and he crumpled to the asphalt like his strings had been cut. I stood over him, watching blood trickle from where he'd split his lip on impact. He was breathing but unconscious. And in that moment, with Jackson Reed helpless, at my feet I had a choice to make. The old Frank, decent law-abiding Frank, whispered that I should call an ambulance. Make sure he was okay. Accept the consequences of my action. But that Frank was gone. Systematically destroyed by the man lying before me. I knelt beside Jackson and carefully arranged his body against the tire of his car, making it look like he'd fallen and hit his head. Then I placed an empty bottle of bourbon I'd brought from home beside him, uncapped, some of the contents spilled nearby. I used his thumb to unlock his phone and sent a text to Diana. "Can't drive. Had drinks with VP. Come get me." Standing up, I surveyed my work. A passed-out executive who'd had too much to drink and fallen against his car. By the time Diana arrived to find him, I'd be long gone. I drove to the marina where I'd put my deposit down. The owner, an old Vietnam vet named Cal, was waiting with the final paperwork and keys. By midnight, I was officially the new owner of Riverside Boat Repair and the small apartment above it. Diana called 17 times that night. I didn't answer. She left increasingly frantic voicemails, first asking where I was, then demanding to know if I'd had anything to do with Jackson's accident, finally breaking down and admitting everything, begging me to come home so we could work it out. I texted her only once. "The house is yours. The debt is too. I've taken what I'm owed." Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a bourbon, and sat on the small deck overlooking the boats bobbing gently in their slips. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. The next morning, I called my brother and told him where I was. He promised to drive down the following weekend to help me set up the shop. Then I turned my attention to my new business, my new life. 3 days later, I got an email from Mike Dempsey. Jackson had been arrested for embezzlement. Apparently, the special benefits he'd promised Diana and other union officials had involved falsifying company financial records. Diana was implicated as well. The board had launched a full investigation into Jackson's tenure, including his personnel decisions. Mike ended the email with a job offer. "They're desperate for experienced management now. Your old position, 30% more pay than before. Say the word and it's yours." I sat with that for a long time. The vindication, the opportunity to go back in triumph, was tempting. To see Diana and Jackson face the consequences of their betrayal would be satisfying beyond measure. But as I looked around at my modest marina, at the boats waiting to be fixed, at the simple but honest life I was building, I realized I didn't want to go back. Not to Meridian, not to that life. I replied to Mike, "Thanks, but I'm exactly where I need to be. First repairs on the house if you ever buy that fishing boat you've been talking about for 20 years. 6 months later, Riverside. Boat repair was turning a modest profit. I had 3 employees, all former factory workers looking for second acts of their own. My brother had moved nearby, bringing his mechanical skills and dry humor to the business. Diana pled guilty to conspiracy charges and received probation. Jackson wasn't so lucky. 5 years for embezzlement. They lost the house to the bank after the truth about the business loan came out. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Ohio. Sometimes, on quiet evenings by the water, I think about how completely my life changed in just a few weeks. How easily the identity I'd built over decades crumbled. How thoroughly I'd been betrayed by the two people I should have been able to trust most, my boss and my wife. But more often I think about the future, about the boats I'll fix tomorrow, about the sunset I'll watch from my deck, about the second chance I never knew I needed. They say the end of a shift just means the beginning of something else. For me, that turned out to be truer than I could have imagined.